We do 10% of our gross every year from all three companies back into the community. This is the new crime. As things get easier, they get more dangerous. They get easier for bad actors as well. There are 170 services available in Toronto for victims of crime. An incredible officer, I probably remember 5 or 6. How do we make sure nobody falls through the cracks? Money is one thing. What did you do when you leave here? It's really only who you help.
Hello everyone, it's Daniel Kube here, CEO of servicePath, and today we're lucky enough to have David Leadbetter with us, and he and I coexist in the same office space, where there's a bunch of entrepreneurs or serial entrepreneurs, and David and I got speaking, and he's had a really incredible career journey, serial entrepreneur, multiple BUs, like different business units, and built his business from the ground up, and has a really interesting past, put himself to university doing rebar and concrete, and then went into tech. So David, it'd be awesome if you how did you get started? What sort of motivated you? Because your background's not a traditional tech background in a lot of ways, and your company's flourishing, which I'd love to get to later, but the path there is the really exciting part, which you learned, how found out what you did not like, and how you applied that to make a world where you're really, in a lot of ways, people would look at what you're doing right now and you're kind of living the dream on a bunch of fronts, which is awesome.
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me, Daniel. I'm excited to be on the podcast, and hopefully, I'm an all right attendee to your podcast. So thank you for having me. And yeah, I guess it wasn't really. I was always involved in tech on the side, and just kind of grew with that alongside, obviously, the insurance world that I was in. And sort of what I saw, 20 years in the insurance business. I was the president of a $100 million shop at the end of that journey of working for other people. And what I saw, there was a huge gap. And that's sort of where I was never able to utilize my skills, as an ethical hacker or red team or anything like that. I was never able to utilize them. It was a passion. And I saw the importance a long time before I think it made its curve and became something they even talked about in the insurance world. So I always looked at insurance as truly risk management. So anybody can kind of put together a policy or slap in a cheaper number and jump it up the next year. I think as an industry in insurance, I think I've got a very good grasp around risk management, fire, flood, fleet risk management, but there was absolutely none when it came to cyber hygiene and cybersecurity and the risk. And I had been pushing for it almost a decade within that industry and within that organization, and the one before it. And I just saw, one, through passion, and two, I saw the writing on the wall, and I realized it was changing. The times were changing. Nobody's breaking into an office anymore for petty cash, yet the policies still have a $10,000 petty cash limit, and had major gaps when it came to the cyber insurance, which at the beginning no one understood. And I think still today, I could honestly say most of the brokers that are out there selling it, because almost everybody sells it now, it's hot, don't understand the risk, don't understand really the product, and don't understand how to manage that risk. So you have essentially lay people, producing legal contracts based on applications that are they're checking boxes, and they probably don't, they couldn't answer honestly, 7 out of the 10 questions. So you have the blind leading the blind in a very serious space within the insurance industry, and within any industry. So saw that, and then decided it was very important to me. And I don't know if your viewers will know, but I created all 3 of my companies are social enterprises. So it was very important to me, 1, to give back to the community, 2, to have complete control of where that money went. So, we do 10% of our gross every year from all 3 companies back into the community. And, through the help of my Rotary, through the help of, just our connections within the community, and even some of the stuff we're doing for municipalities with our applications, we see where there's a need, a greater need. And so we're able to divert funds every year to sort of, either subsidize or fund or just look after people in our community. And that was really important to me. I remember the statistic. I don't know if it's when you actually look at the charities, by the time you're done, CEOs, human capital expenses, everything else, 3 cents on the dollar ends up getting to where it needs to get to. And then you saw all that stuff with the we, all those different movements where I was just never seeing the money go to the right place. And there's lots of great people that work in those charities and their hearts are in the right place. But I think until you can control the flow and the end point of where it's going to end up, I don't think you're affecting the same amount of change. So all of these companies have grown that way. Our companies operate with a target, not a new business target, but a target of what we want to give to the community that year. So every staff member across all three companies, when we have those planning meetings, this is where we want to give, this is what we're supporting, how do we get there? And I feel like that is a bigger motivator than, hey, the boss wants to make X number of dollars this year. I mean, one of the cool things, and I think I've got incredible people that work in all three companies, and I wouldn't be able to do what I do if I didn't have amazing leaders that are looking after things while I'm not, when I'm off doing other things. And so one of the cool things and why I think the secret to success, because everybody knows, getting great people is difficult. It became even more difficult after COVID, I think, because you had 3 years of a lot, most people sort of not phoning it in, but working, in sweatpants and, not really being, pushed, I think, within their industry. So one of the cool things that we do is 1 day a week, the team members are able to pick a day a week and we pay them to go work in the community. So everybody has a day and everybody has their own charity. We don't pick for them. It can be SPCA, it can be, community livings. It can be we have all kinds of different stuff. And I think that again cements our goal because, I can tell you some of the staff members or the team members, they come to me and they say, it was a long week or tons of hours. They might not have been able to get there, on their Friday or whatever day they pick. And they'll come and tell me like, listen, I got to put stuff to the side because I need to get out there, for my soul. And I think that really charges people up in kind of all these industries are time consuming and tiring. And we work crazy hours, make hay while the sun shines. But I think that keeps everybody grounded. It keeps everybody, trademarked our slogan is be of service. And, that's what we want to do every day. We want to be of value. We want to be of service to our end user, to our community, and to the people around us. And I think we all keep that in mind in the forefront. And, we've had great success because of it.
Where did you get these values from? Was this like your parents? What was your, were you a Boy Scout?
I just, I think, I've kind of always had that calling and I always looked at it. I kind of used to look at, and I saw the money that we made in all of these industries, tons and tons of money. And I think everybody knows, money makes things easier and more comfortable, but it doesn't make people happy. And I always kind of wasn't self-loathing, but you'd always be like, man, how can I do more? And doing what I'm doing now with skills in risk management or tech or anything else, you don't feel like you're being of service probably to the world. And I think one day it clicked where I said, you know what? Well, we can. Not everybody can, I used to do street outreach, in my teens. We'd ride around in a van and, provide people all the essentials that they needed, clean needles, all the different stuff that was involved there. And, I spent a lot of time doing that. And I spent a lot of time sort of in my community doing those things in my younger years and almost felt like a sellout when I started, building things and businesses and, and doing better in the world financially and through business and kind of was almost mad at myself. Like I should have been still doing those things as almost a career. You can do lots of great stuff and people have lots of great careers in, housing and, social services and everything else. And I came to the realization, I can do something. It doesn't need to be a charitable donation for a tax write-off. We can actually be in the community. I'm a Rotary member and a Rotary does incredible things every single day and, works very hard to help the community. Well, what can I do? Okay, well, we can match whatever the Rotary is able to build, we're able to match that as a company. And, there are twice as many, people we're helping for food for kids, for an example. So I came to realize that I can use these skills. I don't need to be in the van. I can do a lot of stuff within the community with the things that I'm good at. And so I'm sure that answers the question, but yeah, I just think it came from, I'm sure, my parents are great. And, I think I looked for that stuff when I was younger. I just was around a lot of, people in tough times. And I think that led me to.
Where'd you grow up? Sounds
I
like
was
Hamilton.
born in Ottawa, but just I guess maybe a slightly misspent youth, and you just saw a lot of things, and you saw a lot of change, a lot. You could make a lot of changes, and I think when you look at drugs and alcohol and issues there, I think you understand. I hope people understand a lot of that comes down to mental health and issues there. So it's just sort of being around all those things, and even going through your own stuff. I think it softens your heart, I think. And I think it's very motivating for me because, it's money's one thing. You want a comfortable life, but at the same time, what did you do when you leave here? Right. It's really only who you helped, right? And how you do that.
Yeah, I think for me, because, being in tech is stressful, but, when you think about the stress, even though like the rate of change is faster than I've ever seen, I don't know if you know this, but I used to run a place called Seton House for 6 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I think at the time it was the largest homeless shelter in North America. And long story, I had a degree in sociology. I used to be a suicide counselor. And then I went into tech. And it was a weird career path, but starting at the opposite end. But, giving out socks and sandwiches, like things that, you take for granted. And also, when I'm having a crappy day, I just reflect on those days and, the guys on the other side of the counter and just like, my life, it does not suck.
100%. All you need to do, you can come with me. There's a fantastic church, Philpott Church in Hamilton. We're big supporters of, and they've got a service midday that they do, and I bring the staff there, and we're always doing different drives, clothing, different stuff. But when you sit in that room, it really puts any of your problems into perspective. And I think that's just a good thing to do as a person.
Yeah,
but that's amazing. I didn't know.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that. That's a great story.
Yeah. Anyways, lots of hilarious stories from that one. But so you've developed, so you started off kind of like leveraging your insurance skills, starting a new insurance company that kind of became the cash cow that enabled you to go into other areas, or did you start them all concurrently?
Concurrently, because I had already had, behind the scenes, I'd already had the tech running, right? With friends.
Did you build the tech, by the way, or did you have the idea?
All built.
Was your degree in comp science?
Yeah. So I've got an ethical hacking degree and everything else. So it was always something we did. And as friends, we are all doing it anyways while I was working in the insurance industry. So it just made sense. Insurance I could kind of do under my sleep. It takes work, obviously, but I'd done it a long time and I wasn't able to utilize the skills I wanted to utilize. And I just saw something better. We could do it better. We could do it faster. We could do it cleaner. We could help more people. But issue with the insurance companies or brokerages, they're all great, but the problem is a lot of it's antiquated. And I think victims of their own success because they do very well. And it was always, if it's not broken, why fix it? So it's very hard to get people that don't understand the tech. I always say it's like somebody, that can't work on iPhone 4 and you're trying to explain to them why, there's issues with cyber hygiene and what we need to do. We need to deploy our autonomous code and everything. It's just wasn't the time or wasn't the place, but I knew it needed to be built. So it was always building in the background and doing things and, just have friends in that circle. We've done it forever. And the insurance was something that I was very good at. And what we did was we built both out, all about based out tech-based. So, I've got my own programs. We've done like Brokering Pro, for instance. So insurtech that I built, I utilize. So some of them are spite builds where I look at, there's big companies within the insurance space, charge tons of money for, again, antiquated products. So I would build something for myself and my team.
I love a spite build.
Oh, you know what? So I did a spite build for a broker management system, and it was a real spite build just because there's one big player. Like there's a Coca-Cola, and they keep everybody else out of the industry, and because they've got great contracts with insurers, it's easy, it's trusted. Here you go. But unfortunately, looking at this as a mid-sized business, I don't have $250,000 to onboard antiquated tech and consultants to hire to train insurance employees that also don't like change or utilizing tech. So the whole thing. So I did a spite build. We use our own BMS that I built, and I tried to release it for free to everyone, which got stopped. But that again, that's what I call the spite build, because I was like, hey, anybody, you know what? Here it is. Use it for free. I don't want the money. Just use it. But it turned out that, big clout just completely stopped that dead in its tracks, because it doesn't work if it can't communicate with the insurers. And nobody's taking a chance on a spite build by little old me. So anyways, but again, Brokering Pro. So I built Brokering Pro, which kind of the way I would do is like a 1.0 I'll use, build out the 2.0, and then we'll likely give that 1.0 away to, smaller brokerages that would need it. But again, and it's just crazy to say, but a Brokering Pro probably can remove the need for 7 employees in a larger firm. And so we utilize it. We don't let anybody go. It just frees people up to do different things, but constantly building stuff for myself. And if I like it and it works for me, it makes sense. So the brokerage runs more efficiently, quicker. I have more capital to deploy on, I like to believe, better, more talented people. And then everybody that we do hire, I'm lucky enough to hire really driven people that, the social aspect is important to them as well, which I think just really gets you better, not better people, but, nicer people that I want to work with. All right. And so that's really worked out well. And so it's kind of just building and it's doing everything. But I think the passion is I like to build things on the tech side. And I think that has advanced us in sort of all the businesses. And, as I get better people, I've got fantastic people running the insurance brokerage, and, I'm still there and still kind of leading it, but I'm just implementing all of these things constantly and just trying to be ahead and think creatively about what we need, build it for ourselves, and then, put it out into the market as far as that insurtech stuff goes. But it's not as sexy. It's not as sexy as the other stuff. Like, so we use an example of, so for municipalities right now, we built an app, and that's for it's to help the world. So, and it's utilizing our AI to essentially, without giving too much away, because it is in closed beta right now, it will make sure that no one in need will fall through the cracks. It connects every service available and allows it to be just drawing in every service, setting the meetings, following up. And I always give the example, which is why it's funny, that app started over a conversation. So I'm a Brazilian Jiu-jitsu black belt, and I've done martial arts for years, and I was on a training when we have vacation, a training. We went out to train with an incredible jiu-jitsu practitioner in Arizona. And I went with a bunch of police, gangs and guns guys, and everybody. Yeah, no, he's not. I don't want to say it. But he's taken it, funny enough, he's taken it to the next level where it's Henry Akins. And so what he did, he was Hickson Gracie's first American black belt, like slept in the academy. And Hickson, if you know jiu-jitsu, he's a god. He's magic. A little of it was marketing, but a lot of it is he's actually incredible. Once you hit a certain level, you understand it's these subtle techniques. But we were out in Arizona training with, he's kind of our guru, and the Toronto police are awesome enough to train their top talent in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which limits the use of guns and tasers and everything else if you know how to control a person without injuring them. So police services do a great job of that. We're all out in Arizona, and it was after a training session. We probably got out for dinner, and we're sitting around this big Airbnb that we had, and we started talking about I started hearing about the issues that were going on within the community, because one of the things I don't think I know, but I don't think a lot of people realize is really what the police do in the community and the care that's involved, right? Especially nowadays, you see people shooting on social media, shooting videos of every single arrest, and it's very hard to be a police officer now. I can tell you, just from being so involved and having such dear friends in that space through jiu-jitsu and just in that environment. Very hard to be an officer, but a lot of stuff is done that we never know about. And so hearing about how it operates, and then the flaws in the current system, and it was sort of around an officer goes to a domestic violence call, arrests the husband. There's a wife and 2 children that are left there, and they're getting another call and they're gone. There are 170 services available in Toronto for victims of crime. Let's say an incredible officer, on top of his mind when he's worrying about his safety and everyone else's safety, could probably remember 5 or 6. Do they even get to go have that conversation before they're called out to another call? Maybe not. So how do we solve that? How do we make sure nobody falls through the cracks? And so this is what this app that we've developed, that's what it does. And the cool thing about that is, so I've taken no money from anyone. I've taken no grants, no loans, no anything. Everything has been built and paid for. And so we kind of have no masters, which is nice. So I'm able to do crazy things that I want to be able to do that I think will make a change. And because of the success of our cybersecurity company, I'm able to fund builds like this. So, I'm sure we could get all kinds of grants and different things. I just don't even, the amount of paperwork that's involved in producing some of those. And we have, you and I know, we've got great people right around us, right? Amazing Innovation Factory and, angel investors and everybody else. It's just been nice to not need that and to be able to build this because we do a good job on our security side.
With AI, because I remember when I used to work, so before I was a social worker, before I ran the homeless shelter, and I used to give out welfare, but our Bible was something called the Blue Book, which I think probably still exists. But the Blue Book was the aggregation of all those services. But you're right, no one had time to read it and chase it. Like building an app and like that is super helpful for people and first responders.
And it learns, it's very cool. And I think it's going to be a game changer. And just like our security, obviously we migrated into the US and, we have contracts with some very, very large enterprise companies. And through moving that, the same plan and the same model is what I'm going to follow with this. So we started close to home. Everybody has the same problems, right? And, I think to be successful, you've got to be a problem solver. You've got to put yourself in that position. That's the great thing about tech. And, I kind of call this AI for good, because I believe, there's a million ways to make money. Things are going to change, right? Obviously, the way the world's moving, how quick it's moving, things will change. A lot of white collar jobs will be gone. Right? We're not going to have, I think, 2 years, there'll be, right now, I can tell you just from knowing, like many big four services and professional services are utilizing, their own AI that's built for billions of dollars to do the work of most of the people before the sign off of a senior person. So that's only going to continue to happen, obviously.
Yeah. I don't know if you've watched the CNBC interview of the CEO of Palantir this week.
No.
And so he incredibly successful. They coined the concept of the forward deployment engineer, which, everyone's now copying. But his whole thing is he believes the frontier models are basically harvesting all the confidential alpha of all organizations, which basically means that, they can create any business they want overnight with no legacy debt. Anyways, so, I don't think I'm that much of Alex Karp. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyways, a super smart guy, super passionate as well. But at the same time, it just shows you, even if they don't do it, they have the data that someone could hack and potentially do it, right? So that's like you're in a great industry because they're going to try to protect those jewels.
Sure, and that's probably a good segue just into that sort of the current. And this is again, be of service. So building those apps and doing that stuff with, I feel like we're really doing good work within, cybersecurity. I believe in the insurance and the risk management, looking after people, treating people fairly, and doing a good job for them. That's the, our ethos. But I'm passionate about the cybersecurity aspect of it just because it's misunderstood. It's kind of undervalued in a lot of spaces.
Yeah, I don't think it will be for long, because at my premise on this stuff, there are so many dwell attacks right now that people just don't understand. And for those who don't know what a dwell attack is, it means they're in your system and you just don't know it, and they're just basically hibernating or harvesting.
On average, 242 days.
Yeah, and because I did some work way back on cyber, and it's interesting. I think the most wanted in North America, 10 of them are foreign nationals that are government employees in other countries, which is just crazy. And these are some of the best dwellers in the world. But I think I was sharing with you earlier, like I'm a geek. Like I love technology, and I pride myself in not getting phished or attacked. But I I was sharing, like, one of the attacks that I received yesterday was just so incredible. So for those who are listening, imagine this: you're a business who revenue and new customers make your engine go. So it's a form fill that's very well filled out, target market, ICP fit. So right away you have your positive bias playing on the form fill. And then, even though your spidey sense is triggering, saying, oh, this seems kind of weird, but anyway, still good, let's follow up. But immediately that person responds, but it's now a bot responding who's pandering to your ICP, saying, oh yeah, we have this many users, we're really looking forward to it, we had problems with your incumbent. And
the perfect client. Yeah.
The perfect client. And then they send, oh, but I'm so interested, here's my link to my calendar for you to book a meeting with me. And that was the framing for the injection attack. We didn't click, but by the same token, the only reason I triggered on it is I got the exact same pattern 12 hours later, just different names. So,
And they're playing off the ease. They're playing off the ease. That's a Calendly attack, if you think of where it actually comes from. And really, all of it is just understanding human psyche. Like, 90% of attacks, it's phishing. It's not a ton of brute force attacks. A lot of it is human error, right? And that's why our adage is, creating human firewalls. But they understand what you want. A lot of it is, it's that social engineering where that's the perfect client. And we had just been speaking about, that's an example from yesterday, very similar to what we saw. We do a lot of security in, within the insurance market, construction market, and there was a bit of a dip where, everybody was hurting for jobs. So everybody was bidding on everything. And very similar, they'd gone to the trouble of creating, obviously, a website, but to the LinkedIn. So they created this CEO in LinkedIn. He had, we'd said, like 52 mutual connections. So when that contractor even went as far as to look him up, they're like, oh, he knows Jim, he knows Joe. And it was, click here, fill this bid out. It's a great job. We caught it, luckily, and then again, with the threat hunting and with our intelligence, the way we share intelligence with our clients based on their segments, it's all day, every day. And I think that with our training we provide are the two tools that make us so successful. Obviously, the stuff that we, the code that we write in our autonomous stuff, and all those things are important, but it starts with the people. It really does, and training people up. And it's funny. You get a lot of pushback, or you can get a lot of pushback from, the generation 10 years left to work. They've done something a certain way. They don't feel comfortable with technology. But it's funny, when you train them properly in like bite-sized pieces and, you really just kind of let them lead, they start to learn things and they start to share. I have a lady named Bev for a company, and she was dead against it, didn't want to do it. She's one of my, greatest threat intelligence hunters, and like she constantly shares new phishing campaigns and everything with us. And I absolutely love it, because that's sort of a job well done, where you have people thinking twice. But like I said, with the new, as things, I always say, as things get easier, like we're looking at eSIMs being spoofed constantly, right? So before, you had to be a man in the middle attack. You had to physically pull the SIM card, and it was a lot more difficult. Now you get your iPhone, from iPhone 14 and up, you're taking a picture with that screen of the squiggly, and now all of a sudden your phone's transferred. So as things get easier, they get more dangerous. They get easier for bad actors as well. But again, it's, that's what I'm passionate about. It's about educating, and the companies now, we were just talking, still, we have massive clients and, highly tuned for professional segments of our, community. And they're being ravaged by attacks and, wire fraud, all kinds of different stuff. And they come to us. We've got a deal with one of the large North American insurers, and we help their clientele in a certain space. So, they're coming in every day, 5, 6 at a time. And, when I'm on those calls, it's nuts. It's nuts. Like backups done. We had one backup done once a year. And just no sort of, breaches and different things going on. And, there's some governance, right? So, Peter, there's some really important things that you've got to do. You have a duty of care, and they're very good at what they do. It's an afterthought. Nobody sort of pushed it or anything. And that was why we have enterprise clients that keep the lights on. But again, my passion too with this is middle market and, small business, because it really dawned on me. We had a large contractor and he had a subcontractor, flooring company, and 6 employees, 5 vans, a little industrial unit. He was ransomed $150,000. And I'm thinking of what that was when it comes to his retained earnings. He may not be making money for 2 years. And I always remember the conversation I had, because obviously you want to work with, after someone's breached is not the time you really want to be taking them on. It's, because it says a lot of things, but we do. And obviously we're a referral based business. We don't advertise at all. So working with them, one of the first questions we asked was, who manages, your IT, who manages your network? And the answer was, and I always remember this, my office manager's husband is good at computers. That was the answer. And now it all makes sense. And there's still a lot of that going on in firms where, you're like, really? Like it's everywhere. It's really important. And I think the mid-market and the small companies don't get the service they need. They don't get the training. They don't get a lot of the things that we try and give, because, Arctic Wolf is doing a great job on some big fours, right? Nobody's teaching and working with and caring, I don't think, about the mid and small market the same way. And so that's what we're passionate about. And we've built things around that, and we're very cognizant of cost and everything else. That's the other thing. People, it's easy to put a price on something and, equate value if it's something you understand. Even insurance. People may not like insurance, but they understand I'm operating a business. I need liability. You need errors and omissions. You need professional liability in certain cases. You need techie, and lots of times just because the bank wants it or somebody that's financing something of theirs, they need it. So they look at that as something they don't like, but it's a cost of doing business. And I'm trying to get out there. So is cyber. So is cyber insurance, and so is cybersecurity. It's no longer a nice to have. It's a must have. And it's a lot more dangerous out there without it for you than it would be. I tell people honestly, and I probably don't know if I should say that, but I'm like, you need this more than you need your fire insurance. Like we have sprinklers, like I was mentioning to you, the petty cash, $10,000, extension on petty cash. Nobody's breaking in a window and stealing your laptop. Nobody's, going into your safe with your $10,000 petty cash, which is not even a thing anymore. They'll have that, but they won't have, any limits on cyber insurance. And on that was another thing that really, again, trying to help people understand. One of the major things that's kind of phased out now, but when I started this and, when this all kind of became popular within the insurance industry and a need, insurers would put on a very, very tiny rider that would say, like cyber insurance, and it would be $50,000 or something. And it did. There was no, good luck with your breach coach and everything else that you're going to need when this happens, your forensic and everything else. It almost paid for nothing. But the problem is it was just enough to make a layperson say, oh, I've got cyber insurance, I'm good. And that really bothered me. So I was always running around preaching that this is not what it is. It's not right. And then they're relying on a broker to explain to them something that they don't understand. And that's not their fault. It's just, there's a lot to know, right? There's a lot to understand. So, I think that's important. And I think it's more important, honestly, like obviously you need your liability and the building burns down, but I just want people to understand this is the new crime. Guys aren't running around, certain areas in the city, guys have the balaclavas and the Glocks, but 90% of the criminals now that are actually producing some serious damage are virtual.
So, on that topic, you see the rate of change and the rate of change in attack vector is just like changing almost weekly, maybe even faster now. What are some best practices that you are telling people to do outside of having insurance? Because the best thing is never to be breached. So is it like rolling pen tests, encrypt your data at rest everywhere? Like what kind of things are you?
It's all those standards. I'll tell you one of a really big problem I see in the industry, and this is, I come across it almost every day. And I actually we've got documentation now to explain to people, but you need an actual cybersecurity company. And what you have, where we see problems, because as you said, it's daily. It's daily. When you are actually have your ear to the ground, which you need to, like there's new targets, it's ebbs and flows. Some, certain segments of the industry are become popular overnight, and then they're just hammered until it's something else pops up, right? And that's sort of just the way it goes. But the problem is you have MSPs masquerading as masquerading as a cybersecurity company, or maybe not doing that, but telling their client, oh, don't worry, we're good, right? We've got Norton's, it's some pretty crazy stuff. But the problem is they might have used that MSP for their IT services for 20 years. Well, we trust John. Yeah, John, don't worry about it. We're good. And John's not actively threat hunting. John's not red teaming and blue team. Like there's what happens when you're breached? What's John going to do? And I think we've learned, and we've tried to master not being threatening to the MSP. And I always say, like, I don't want you calling any of my super talented people because your printer doesn't work. That's not what we want to do. And that's not what we do. You can continue doing the day-to-day tickets and IT stuff. We're not a threat to you there, but it's also doing a disservice to your client who desperately needs these services. And as you said, it's ever changing. It's by the day. You have to have properly trained people and people that this is all they do. We're not setting up your new Lenovo, right? Where you guys can keep doing that and we'll keep doing what we're doing. But there's a real pushback there because, at one, and we used to do this, funny, we used to pen test and do all kinds of things and then produce the results, like as we go in to have the
kids have a knock.
Yeah. So we would produce those results. It's funny. We do a pretty big accounting firm, and one of the principal's friend owns a pretty large MSP. And that was one of the things that we did. Like we quite literally got inside their network and sort of sat there for 2 weeks. And the owner knew, but his friend who owned the MSP did not. And, he came back to him and said, you don't need them. And they've been a client ever since. He said, yeah, clearly we do. So I don't, sometimes those are like little ego things. And they do prove a great point. Obviously, we don't have the time to be doing that all the time, but it is just people understanding there's a serious need for this. A perfect analogy for that, or perfect comparison would be, your personal lines insurance, because we're going back and forth. Personal lines, it doesn't take much to do your car and your home. Right? It's Ontario rated rates. It's here's your, Honda Civic in this postal code. Here's your price. Your home is, square feet, area, is it high crime? Is it, on a water table? Here's your price. Or to risk manage a large contractor, to risk manage, serious manufacturing, a tech company, those are intricate spaces that need care and understanding and years of expertise. So I liken the MSP to personal lines insurance and cybersecurity to the same risk management that you would do for a large account insurance. And again, it's about educating, being an expert at what you do, and leaving the other experts to do what they do.
So, given the high rate of change in the environment, how did you get your team up to speed on AI successfully? Because it's a relatively new phenomenon.
Yeah.
And how do you continually, because it's one thing that, we continually are investing in heavily. And it's not just the base training, but it's the continuous renewal now, because, things are, the information that or methods we're using today will be very different in 6 months and even more different in 18 months.
And I wish I could answer that question by telling you to figure it out some ingenious way. And, I lead from the front, and I'll tell you one of the secret is hire brilliant people smarter than you and just kind of go along for the ride. And, I've always believed in that. You're hiring for talent, and a truly talented person in this space, and I work with a ton of them. If you did a caliper profile on them, right, and you're going to get a lot of that. If you're bringing people onto your organization for any task, if you're working with a larger organization, they're going to do a caliper profile, a disc, or something like that. And let me tell you, because for 30 years I've been best friends with them, I've worked with them, built with them, and done everything else. They're very different people. The people you need to hire would fail almost every single one of those tests. But you have to be around great people with a completely different mindset who are just so passionate about it. Like I don't ever have to have any of my employees on the tech side ever on any of the companies. I don't ever have to have them put in work, extra work. These are passion projects, and if they're not building, they're learning, and they would probably, or many of them would probably just make a regular staff at any other business very uncomfortable. Like they're not, they're amazing what they do. They're not, they're not great interactors with other people, but they're friggin' brilliant, and I like working with them. And so to answer that question is, you have to hire incredible people that are incredible what they do, let them do it, and be bright enough to understand it and try different things, and sort of, don't be scared, I think, and work with great, brilliant people would be my only thing. I wish I had some kind of answer to give you other than I'm lucky, work with awesome people, give them a lot of rope, and then, work with people that are inquisitive and they want to stay on the cutting edge, not because they're paid to. They'd be doing it with or without you. That's the secret.
Because, one of the things that we faced is we believe, because humans have internal biases, and the one thing that I'm seeing is a lot of people have an AI ego. Yeah. And a lot of people think they know a lot, but the problem is, in a dynamic, shifting environment, you know a lot about something from 6 months ago when you went deep. Oh, yeah. So finding those characteristics to make sure that person's staying up to speed is important, because especially in your industry, it's dangerous if they don't. So 100%. What we're trying to do is just continually baseline all our employees, because a lot of people, I know how to do that, but when we actually put them through a program, I learned a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah. And we're trying to figure out how we constantly institutionalize that and make it fun for everybody, because we're seeing massive benefits from AI, but if you don't stay on the crest of the wave, you're going to be crushed by it. And
like you said, the AI ego is funny. It's like Musashi Taoism. It's like, haven't we been told long enough? Like, ego is the killer. What I mean? If you have an ego in this space, I don't think you understand the space, because you can't. Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's already beyond, after when this conversation started to this conversation ending, it's already beyond where it was. So no ego, and continuous learning, and I like the fun learning. That's something I don't know how to implement that, because we're a bunch of people just very driven at what we're doing. I should try and find some ways to make it more fun for people. But again, you want the self-learners anyways. You want the people you don't have to, push in any way. It's almost that entrepreneurial spirit. Treat people like adults. Like, we don't, I don't know where half the people are right now. I just know
we're going late, but I would love for you to share some of the startup stuff you're doing in the US, and because you and I had a fairly detailed discussion about how the environment there is so different than the Canadian environment and what was going on, and I'd love to get your take on that, and what could we take away from that in Canada?
Yeah, well, so I'll tell you, we're very lucky. We've moved our security moved in very nicely into the US with, again, other connections that I've had from other lives, and just sort of our natural progression, working with sister companies here and then moving into the US. We're doing right now, actually, we're building another way of modernizing an antiquated business in the US. It was actually a gentleman sold his company, Berkshire Hathaway, left, wouldn't come back, made a whack of money, as you could imagine, would only come back for something exciting. So they brought me in. We're building. I think it'll be a complete game changer in that industry. And I'm lucky to have sort of this fountain of knowledge and information. And he's only come back because it's exciting. We'll be able to do it in a completely different way. So again, I find in the US, there's obviously many more people, a lot more opportunity. I think as a whole, it's supported more. I don't know if that sounds bad to our Canadian, it's an arms race, right? And if you look at what's going on now, we have to cut this out at the end of the podcast before it goes live. But Canada does a great job of strangling entrepreneurs, strangling tech, and just it's like we talk about. We want.
I mean, to be honest, I don't think we need to cut this out, because I have very strong opinions on this. I actually have an anti-Canadian bias, because I just think Canadian companies don't like buying Canadian tech.
They don't.
And Canadians, for the same sales calories I spend here, I get way more bang for my buck in Europe, Asia, and in the US and LATAM.
Yep. So, and more money, easier adoption, easier onboarding, a better understanding, and a better understanding of the value. And it's sad. And I liken it, it's funny, I liken it to, you can even look back to the music industry. So like think of the Junos, right? It was held in Hamilton last Junos. I don't know when it was because I'm sure you and I didn't watch it, but that's Canadian music. And Canadians don't make it in Canada in the music industry until they're adopted in the US. Then all of a sudden they're great. It's this weird thing we've got in Canada where we don't value ourselves or sort of what's being created within the country until someone else gives it the nod. And I'll tell you now, with the current government, with the current tax structure, with the current everything, once we're gone, this is why they're putting an exit tax. Imagine a country that says, not make it better for bright entrepreneurs that are building and creating for the future, not make it better. They're going to leave because we're not. So let's just tax them on the way out. It's like, it's wild. And some of the people actually that are working on the app, Berkshire individuals app, they're in Canada and they're leaving. And the reason I know what that exit tax is because they're, liquidating millions of dollars of property in the process of doing this just to get away. Just to have freedom, make more money.
I'm a bit more patriotic on that front because the country did create us, right? So I have no issue paying tax, and I've benefited from our infrastructure. But at the same time, we could do a much better job in helping entrepreneurs. And I actually think Carney has some good ideas that have not manifested, but the prior administration was a train wreck. So yeah, like a look around, and I'm not. You know what? I was a proud Canadian. I love where I was born. I don't love the leadership, and I don't love where it's gone the last 10 years. And I think, I just think, and it's like we said, man, it's just easier to do business there. There's so much more. There's so much more opportunity. Makes you feel good too, right? Because they're merit based. Oh, you do it. This stuff is really good. Like, yeah, for sure, it's better than the competitors.
And everyone's given a fair chance. I think too. It's like, I don't know. And I build in Canada. I'll be in Canada. My businesses are in Canada. My family's in Canada. I too. I don't know if I love it like you, but I pay the tax and have for years. It's not even, it wouldn't even be the tax that I pay because we give away, as much money as I probably pay in tax personally. It's the fact of where it's going and what it's used for.
Yeah. No, for us to be like competitive, we need to leverage these tools. We need to leverage AI. We need to add value to the resources we extract.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, the tariff thing was a good wake-up call because it really focused us on diversification. But now it's up to us to make sure we maximize the opportunity. So
100%. And that's by Canadians supporting Canadians, right? Buy Canadian tech.
Exactly.
let's put some my Canadian flag logos on all that stuff. It's same thing, right? Mm-hmm. And you do want to support, and so it's all politics. We shouldn't talk politics, shouldn't talk religion, but at the same time,
we got a great flag though. Anyways, and
great flag.
And we almost made it to the round of 16.
That was huge. That was huge. Yeah.
That was very, very. But the World Cup was great, and it's just really. I'm actually very optimistic and excited about the future. I just know ultimately humans need to have something to do, and they need a mission and something to drive them. And that's the only thing that fears me. It gives me some fear about, an amazing surplus from AI. Because even if people are wealthy, to your earlier point, doesn't mean you're happy, right? People need a sense of purpose. And but I've just seen the explosion of ideas that my team has, and all the new markets that we can enter, and all the new opportunities that we can exploit that weren't unexploitable before by anybody. So it's cool.
Yeah,
I'm not a doomer on AI, but
a lot with a little innovation, right? And I should say we're both sitting, in a beautifully, funded, Canadian funded, municipal funded environment where you and I are able to meet and share ideas, right? Just down the hall, we're working with lots of people within this space already, and sharing ideas and very cool stuff. So I shouldn't say.
So shout out to Tech Place in City of Burlington and Innovation Factory. Yeah.
Absolutely awesome group of people, and so that is pushing it. So I think going back to my comments, there is a lot of love. It's just the market, it's the buying public, and in the U.S. there's just more people. They pay more money, they make more money.
No, it's just and they're also very into driving in. They're less conservative. They want to try and innovate. They want to try new things because they believe in competitive differentiation.
That's a perfect example. he doesn't never needs to work again, right? And he doesn't really understand the tech, but he's like, shit, man, we can absolutely disrupt this entire industry. I'm in. And I'm like, cool, we'll build it for you. We'll maintain some of the ownership in it and, some equity in the actual business. I'll build it for nothing. I love building. This is what we want to do. And then we're going to disrupt over there. An entire industry, to be honest, I didn't even know existed. Yeah. Very niche. And I'm like, oh, that's actually an industry? Yes, it's a very high paid industry. It's very cool. So, that's the stuff that gets you to bed. And that's the stuff that's really exciting. And that's why I'm always walking around with a smile on my face. And like you said, just keep creating, high-fiving each other in the hallway and, keep supporting each other, because it is, like you said, some days are a grind. I think 2026 was a sleep under the desk season. It was written on my board back there. This is the way it's got to be. It's the way it's got to be. So,
Anyways, well, this has been a great conversation.
Thank you, Daniel.
Dude, thanks for coming on. It was a lot of fun. And we'll see you in the hallway.
Thank you, brother.
Cheers.